Welcome back to the course Applied Transport Modeling with Visum. I'm Guido Cantelmo, the lecturer of today. And today we're going to walk you through network design, mostly private transport, but actually this is really the very basic network design. So we're going to see how to create a network. Uh, so let's start immediately. The content of the lecture of today, as I mentioned, is about network design. So we are basically gonna cover two um, 2 points. The first point is OpenStreetMap. Why OpenStreetMap? Well, because OpenStreetMap is one of the several of the infinite sources of data that we have, but one of the advantages that is pretty spread worldwide. So you can get network data for almost any city in the world. Uh, of course, this comes with a big limitation, and the fact is that the network of uh, OpenStreetMap are not as good as networks that maybe you can get from public authorities or network that you will or network that you design yourself. After that, we are going to talk about how to edit the network. So the concept of traffic analysis zones, the concept of links, and the concept of nodes, how to create them in the network and how to modify them. Now, before starting the lecture, a couple of practical informations. So during the last class, we had a couple of questions about the number of credits of this course and if this course come with Matsim and if this course come with seminars that can somehow give some credits to the students. So the answer is the course is a standalone course that only provides 3 credits. If you need additional credits, you need other courses. Matsim can be one of them, but it's a separate course. For some of you from the Master of Environment, there were some confusing information in Moodle. I contacted the coordinator of the master and he confirmed that this information, specifically there was a seminar that was supposed to be complementary. This seminar doesn't exist, was something related to the previous years when the course was combined with Matsim. They reported this error and it will be modified in Moodle. So to be fully clear, the course is only 3 credits. Those of you who need additional credits need to talk with the coordinator of your master if this course was appearing as a 6-credit course, because it is not. Okay. Now, let's start with the course of today. The first part, as I said, is how to download the network data in Visum. First of all, once again, how to install Visum. This is something we discussed in the previous class. This is the link where you can get the student version, which comes with certain limitations in terms of number of zones, number of links that you can use. Something also very important to remember is that Visum comes only for Windows computers. So if you have a Linux computer, you probably have a dual booting. So just switch to Windows for Visum. That will make your life easier. If you have a Mac computer, you might try to use Parallel. The point is that Visum only works for Windows computers. So as far as I know, at least. So if you have a Mac computer or a Linux computer, try to find a solution, because all of the work that we are going to do with Visum, it will require somehow you to work with a Windows computer, probably. Again, a short recap from the last time. We already introduced how transportation systems look like. We already introduced the supply, the demand and the activity system. Now we're gonna go one step further. So first of all, why Visum or in general softwares are very important to handle transportation systems. The real reason is that each of these systems as an isolated one can be, it's a relatively simple system. If we only work on the supply, if we only work on the activity system, if you only work on the demand, they are very complex. But we can probably use, we don't need probably dedicated software for that. When we start, however, to study the relationship between supply and demand, things become extremely more complicated, and we need dedicated software that have been developed exactly for this specific purpose. So this is where Visum helps us. Visum helps us to not only working with the supply, with the demand, or with the activity system, but to work with these systems all together and to actually capture the correlations that exist between these systems. As I mentioned in the previous class, the slides that we provide for this course are supposed to be self-explanatory. You might actually not need to follow the video because everything is explicitly written in the slides. It is, as you can very clearly see, the website you have to go, which option you have to select, which button you have to press, and so on. However, in this video, I will show you how to do all of these procedures live. So I will quickly walk you through the slide, and then I will basically repeat the same operations with Visum or with OpenStreetMap or with whatever we are showing in these slides. So let's start from the beginning. Many of you probably know OpenStreetMap. This is a website where you can find maps from pretty much all over the world, pretty similar to Google Maps. The main difference is that, as the name suggests, this website is open and it offers the possibility to download network data. So as you can see, there is a function export. You can select a specific window, a specific area that you want to download, and then you can click on export to download the network. There are also some other options. As you can see, they are also listed in OpenStreetMap. For instance, Planet OSM. It actually gives you the possibility to download large networks that are frequently updated, so that they should have very high quality, or higher quality probably than the one you can download directly from the website. Going to Visum, I will tell you later how the graphical user interface of Visum is structured once that we open it. But it's structured as many other software. So you have a series of options on the top: file, edit, network, demand, which offer you a series of options on how to interact with the maps that you are creating. And under file, you can get the option for import OpenStreetMap files. Also, this small icon of the planet that is reported on the top of the main window, that's the option to activate the background map, which is very helpful to understand where you are in the world, basically. So once that you open the OpenStreetMap importer, you will see that you have several options. One option is to import an OSM file, which is the file that you download directly from OpenStreetMap. Another option is actually to directly download data from OpenStreetMap directly into Visum. This is this option over here. As you can see, there are the coordinates of the window, the same that appear in OpenStreetMap, and you can directly download them from there. Of course, you have to read and accept all the conditions from OpenStreetMap. And then you will get something like that. This is basically what happened when you import the network from OpenStreetMap. So as you can see, the background map in this case is OpenStreetMap. So it shows exactly Munich. And this other part in orange is basically the information that you imported from OpenStreetMap. Something that will very likely happen is that the network that you will download is probably going to be too large. If the network is too large, you need probably to reduce it. Now, there are two instruments that you can use to interact with the network at this stage. The first one is network statistics. So if you click on network and then you go on network statistics, you will open this window. This window tells you how many nodes are in your network, how many links are in your network, as well as number of traffic zones, connectors, origin destination, OD pairs. It provides you all the statistics about everything pretty much in your network. This is important, of course, when you download maps from OpenStreetMap, because you might have that the network is too big for the student version. But in general, this function can be useful for any network. When you get any network in Visum, you want to understand how big it is, how complicated it is. This option is a very good option for understanding everything is in the network and to see how big the network you're working with is. Another option I will show you is to directly check the links, nodes, and traffic zone one by one. To do that one, if you see in Visum on the left, you have this network window with a list of network elements, including nodes, links, turns, zones. So if you right-click on one of them, for instance, links, you will open a dialog box. You can select list and links, and it will list you all the links in the network. So for instance, you can see that in this network, there are 4,316 links. And for each one of these links, it will provide information, including origin node, destination node, type of link, which mode of transport can use this link, and so on. As we mentioned before, the network that you are using is probably going to be too large. You might want to cancel part of the network. And this is what you can do. What you can do is to select links, spatial selection mode, select links, and interact with the network. Now, what are we looking at here? Well, first of all, as I mentioned, and I will show in Visum, this window represents a series of options that you have. Which element you want to interact with, the node, the link, and so on. Here you will have several options, which is spatial selection mode is one of them, and is the one with the square, but you might also have simple select or insert. I will show this in the graphical user interface as it is easier, but the idea is that you can use spatial selection mode to select a subset of links and nodes and cancel them, erase them from your system. Another useful tool is the network check. The network check is extremely important as it allows you to identify errors in your network. So if you want to use network check, you have first of all to select nodes. While select nodes because we want to start from the nodes, for instance, you could use links, turn, or everything else. But in this example, we want to remove all isolated nodes. So if we want to remove all the isolated nodes in the network, the first thing to do is to select nodes, of course. then we can use calculate network check. The network check window will open something like this, which is a series of information and a series of error that Visum can calculate for us. So isolated nodes is one of them, for instance, but there are also errors related to traffic zones that are not connected, or in general network consistency, turns that make no sense. So a lot of problems that can create eventual problem with your network in Visum. Visum will analyze this, will make this consistency check for you and report all the errors. So if you click run test and then you go on isolated nodes, you can set all the isolate to active state. Before moving to the graphical user interface, so I will actually show you all these elements and eventually will become a little bit more clear to you. Just one general concept. The network checks is a very powerful tool. If your network is not properly designed, you might not be able to run traffic assignment, you might not be able to get proper travel times, you might not be able to run any of the models that we want to run. So you want to be sure that that your network doesn't show any error. And the network check is very smartly divided in three parts. The first one is general, and this basically has always to be verified for the network. So it's include isolated nodes, turns that make no sense whatsoever, multiple turns. We will show what is turn, what is an isolated node very soon. But the point is that these characteristics have to be always checked, and then the rest of the network check is divided between private transport and public transport. In Visum, when you see PRT, PRT is private transport. When you see PUT, is public transport. So get familiar with this type of approach, which this type of abbreviation. If you're working only with private transport, for instance, you might not need to check errors related to public transport. If you're only working with public transport, you might not need to check the errors related to private transport. This is why the network is divided in this way. Also, you can be interested in check the network consistency also for some modes. For instance, you might not be interested in testing the network consistency for bike, car, and heavy vehicles, but only, for instance, for car, heavy vehicles, and that's it, because maybe you're not representing bikes in your network at all. So this is a very powerful tool that you need to that you should use in order to check what happened. And now I'll show you how to do all these things in Visum quite quickly. So first of all, let's start from OpenStreetMap. As I mentioned, OpenStreetMap is a website that we all know very well. And this is the easiest part of our tutorial, let's say. You can just go in Munich. In this case, we are already in Munich. You can navigate wherever you want. You have to zoom in a certain area that you want to export. You can click on Export and go with Export. As you can see here, it says that our request has too many nodes, and we have to use either a smaller area or another website, another source for getting our OpenStreetMap data. Where once again, these are other options to get OpenStreetMap data. In this case, we can just zoom a little bit more and try to see what happens if we export only this area. Okay, in this case, it has downloaded the area. So we can now go for Visum So as you can see, I already have the map uploaded. So if I click on this icon on the top, everything is gonna disappear. So let's start from the basics. How the window is divided how the graphical user interface in Visum works. So as I said in the beginning, this is the standard graphical user interface you obtain when you open Visum. So here on the left, you have this network window. The network window gives you access to, give you the possibility to interact with nodes, links, turns, zones in the network. And it's very important that when you select nodes, you can only interact with nodes. When you click on links, you can only interact with links. As you can see in this window, we also have a second tab, metrics. Now this is empty, but this tab gives you the possibility to interact with, for instance, demand matrices. There are several options like create new matrix on the top. From here, you can create demand matrices or scheme matrices. This is something we are going to discuss later, but this is just to be familiar with the graphical user interface. Now, if by accident you close the window Network X, on the top, you have the general options, the main options of the software, as for any other software. In this case, you want to click on View, Tool Windows, Network, and it will reappear over here. Also, you can move it elsewhere in the network, for instance here, if you like it better. On the bottom, we have a quick view, which means if we have a network, we can look for the characteristics of the link, for instance, like the length, the capacity, the speed. And as I mentioned before, it's important to understand that this is connected to the network window. So the network windows tell us that we are now working with links. If I click on nodes, the quick preview will show us the nodes. If I click on zones, the quick windows will focus only on zones. So this is important to understand that the network windows tell us with which element of the network we are working on. The message windows on the bottom is not as important at the moment as the others. It tells you messages from the software. So for instance, if you are running traffic assignment and the procedure goes well or the procedure goes wrong, this is where probably the software will tell you this. And finally, this is the main working area. So for now, you have the network editor, but many other characteristics, many other windows that you will eventually have to open at a certain point of during the process will appear here. Other important news are this command here. So these three options are perhaps the most important to get familiar immediately with. So let's start from the beginning. The plus here, it is the insert mode. So insert mode, it means that if now I'm in nodes and I'm in insert mode, if I click on my space, I will add a node. 1 node, 2 node, 4 nodes. So whenever you want to add elements to your network, you need to be in insert mode. The second option is edit mode. I advise you to always keep the software in edit mode unless you have specific needs. Edit modes allow you to interact with the network. So for instance, if now I click in the space, nothing happened. If I click on one specific node, now I select the node. And if I double click on the node, I will enter in the junction editor function. Now, of course, it's empty because we have nothing in the network. But as I mentioned before, this new window is appears just next to the network editor, because by default, most of the new windows will open here. Final, of course, you have also the possibility to do right click, which gives you the possibility to get access to a bunch of functions, like from find to list to multi-edit and so on. We'll go through some of these functions during this class. The last option to remember is spatial selection mode. Spatial selection mode, as it advises, as the name suggests, it gives you the possibility to select a group of nodes. So for instance, now I selected all the nodes, but if I select only part of it, now only one node is selected. So if I do modification in the network, whatever I do, I will only be working on this node. This is important when you want, for instance, to cancel, to erase part of the network, or when you want to modify part of the network. Also, it is important to see that here now you have a bunch of options. So this option tells you if you want to include in the spatial selection only nodes or also other elements. In this specific case, it is including nodes, links, turns. It's including everything actually. But the other important information is this red dot here. So as you can see, next to node, there is now this red dot that before wasn't existing. And even if I switch to edit mode, the red dot stay there. So the red dot says, be careful, not all the nodes in the system are active, so whatever you're doing is not going to influence all the network. And if I select against everything, the red dot disappears. Good. So step number 2, now that we got a little bit more familiar with the graphical user interface, we can go through import data in Visum from OpenStreetMap. So you have to click, as I mentioned, in File, Import, OpenStreetMap. Of course, I don't want to save this. Now it opens this window. As I mentioned, you have several options. In this specific case, I want to open this map over here, I think. You have to click I accept, otherwise you cannot import it. So you have to read, of course, and accept the condition from OpenStreetMap. And then Visum will do the magic. So this is basically the same network that I show in the slides. As you see, there is a lot of information, and most of this information we might not want it, we might not need it. So how do we manage to have a better visualization? Well, Visum offers us a lot of options to interact with the network, and one important option is this small icon next to the label nodes. So first of all, yeah, as I mentioned before, if you want to see where we are, you can enable the network, and you can see that we are now in the middle of Munich. If you don't want to see something, you can just click on, for instance, let's see, POI. I was looking for something that actually could remove it. So when you download data from OpenStreetMap, it downloads a lot of information, including, for instance, the point of interest. You might not be interested in the point of interest at the moment, or you might not be interested in seeing them at the moment. So something that you can do is just, as you see now, the star next to POIs is light gray. If I click on the star, it becomes dark gray. It means that I'm not visualizing anything anymore. And at the moment, I want to deactivate basically everything. I can also deactivate the bus stops, counting station, GIS object, paths, main turns, main nodes, and traffic zone. So by doing this, now I only visualize nodes and links. And if I click on links, for instance, you can see that they also disappear. Now, next phase, as I mentioned, you can see that I cannot save the file at the moment. The reason I cannot save the file is that the file is too big. So what I need to do is to check how big it is. And to do so, I can use network statistics. So you have to click on network from the graphical user interface, and you have to click on network settings. Let me just put a window in the center so that you can look at it better. So if you go to network statistics, you can see exactly what I was saying before. So you have more than 4,000 links, almost 2,000 nodes, 12,000 terms. So this is a very general overview of the statistics you have. If you want, for instance, to have more information about the links, you can use the list function. So you have to click on links first, then you have to right click on links. It will open this window, and then you can go on list. If you click on list, you have two options, links and link style. For now, we go on links. Once again, it opens a window exactly next to the network editor. And it will give you the possibility to see how many links you have in the network together with their characteristics, such as mode of transport that they are used, from which node to which node they are going, the OpenStreetMap ID, the speed, the capacity, the number of lanes, the length, all the characteristics that you need. So this is important. When you are opening this list, you are looking at links that are in your network. So for instance, if you select one of these, right click, you click find, confirm selection. Again, right click, find. It will find it in a network. Then you can say confirm selection. I want to select this link, and then you can go back to network editor, and there you go. The link that you selected in the list of links has been selected in Visum. Another option, as we said, very important, is the network check. So once again, let's go on nodes now. Let's deactivate the background, because at this point, actually, I don't like it anymore. I want to work on the network. Let's go on calculate network check. Now, this is slightly different from what you have seen in the slide, but the content is the same. It's just that was the version of Visum from last year. The version of Visum from this year, apparently they changed a little bit the graphic, but the concept is the same. So for instance, you can select isolated nodes. You can select run. 12 nodes have been identified. Right click, set to the active state, and then you close. And now you can see, even better if we remove this, now you can see that there are a lot of nodes that are gray, that's good, and there are few nodes in blue. The few nodes that are in blue are the nodes that are isolated, which means not connected. So let's give it a check. So for instance, this node, so I can go in selection, I can select the node, and I can just cancel it. what do you want to treat the link as the node? Delete. It did cancels also the link in this case. Why so? Well, to be honest, it really depends a lot on which is the reason why the node was isolated. But the point is that one of the reasons is the node was isolated probably was related to the terms in this case, and not to the fact that the node was actually not connected. For instance, in this case, the node was not connected. In that case, probably the node was related to the link. So let's cancel it. I click on back, so it should have added again the node. Now I can add the node. And it seems like for now there are no problems. So it means that maybe this is something that for now you don't want to remove. You might not want to remove it because you don't know why it's wrong, why it has been recorded as an error. This means that the error could be elsewhere in the network. Could be, for instance, related to the fact that this link is disconnected. So it requires a little bit more of study. This node, for instance, it clearly can be deleted without providing any error. This node can also be removed without providing any error. So the network check helps you identify this type of errors, and it helps you fixing them and having a network that is consistent. So we already know that this network is not consistent for a series of nodes. So last and not the least option, let's say that you want to cut this network because, as I mentioned before, it is too big. Well, what you can do is to use the spatial selection mode. So the spatial selection mode by default, as you have seen before, it will select everything is in the area. Let's reselect everything. You can probably say, do not select the links. And now you have seen that it has been working only on the nodes, not on the links anymore. But let's say that you might not need a square cut. If you want to remove, for instance, this segment of road here, let's see, maybe we can do it with a square one, but let's say we don't want. If you need a different, or this road in the middle, for instance, okay, if you want to remove it, it might be complicated using a square selection, so you can actually use a different selection, a personalized shape. How do you do it? Well, you do it by doing the same, but you press first Ctrl. So I'm currently pressing Ctrl. Now I click in the white space, and as you see, now I get this line. I don't get anymore a square. And if I now click on this point, now I get a triangular area. So I can now select this point and this point. And if I'm happy with this selection, I just press enter. So as you can see, this is a way to select a certain area which has a shape that is not rectangular, but can be everything you want. Then you can press delete. And that's it. It deleted a part of the network. So you can keep going this way to remove elements of the network until the network obtains the size that you actually need. This is it for importing the network. Now we are going to work with another file that I will also upload in Moodle so that you can also follow the tutorial step by step. So for now, we close Windows, we close the Visum so that we don't have to close it anyway in 25 minutes, and we will open it again very, very soon. So the next element is traffic analysis zone, links, and nodes. So first of all, let's go through some definition. What is a transport network? Well, the network structure is represented by an oriented graph. The graph is defined by a set n of elements called nodes and by a set of pairs of nodes belonging to the network called links. So in general, we can divide the network in three parts at least. The traffic analysis zones that we did identify in the previous network. They are geographical area to which the socio-demographic variables are related. Departure and arrival point of the trips traveling to or from a zone are assumed to be originated within an arbitrary location within the traffic zones. We have links that represent basically segment of roads, and we have nodes which represent basically that connects links. How do we define nodes? Well, nodes correspond to at least two nodes identify changes in your transportation supply. So for instance, when you have an intersection where people can choose to go straight, left, or right, you need to include a node. A node where people coming from a certain link can decide to switch to another link. However, if you have, for instance, just a straight motorway, you might still want to put one node in the middle. When does this happen? This happens, for instance, when you have a change in the capacity. If you have that a certain kilometers of motorway are only with 2 lanes, and at a certain point you switch to 3 lanes, you need a node to represent the change in the characteristics of the road segment. That's because you will use 2 different links to represent the part of the road that is 2 lanes and the part of the road that comes with 3 lanes. So let's look at how do we introduce traffic zones in Visum. Well, as I mentioned, you have to click clearly on traffic zones first. You have to go in insert mode, and then you have to decide where you want to put your traffic zone. At a certain point, then after creating the centroid, clearly you have to decide the edge of the traffic zone. And finally, you can complete the traffic analysis zone. Once that you have created the traffic analysis zone, you will need to create the connectors. As we discussed in the previous situation, creating connectors is a little bit arbitrary, which means there are many ways to do it wrong and only some ways of doing correct. So for instance, if in this case you have this traffic zone and you connect it to the motorway, that's clearly wrong. Why it is wrong? So this first case, because even though this network, this traffic zone might be connected to this, well, this is not a motorway, this is a main road. But even if the traffic zone is connected to this road, there are also other roads, and user may decide to start their trip in this area of the network rather than in this area of the network. This is why the correct function, it has 4 connectors. Another reason for which this is wrong is that you have just one connector on one segment. But if this segment is a one-way direction, that doesn't work. That's why you need at least to have 2, one on each of the 2 links. Finally, the worst thing that you can do is to, of course, introduce connectors that make no sense. If you, for instance, connect the connectors from zone 1 to this link over here, that makes no sense whatsoever. And the reason is that you are basically assuming that people are somehow having teletransportation from one side to the other of the network, which of course is gonna be very problematic when you try to do any traffic analysis zone. Traffic analysis zone. You have to create clearly several of them, not only one. So in this example, we have created several. But also, as I mentioned in the previous class, you need to create also external zones that represent whatever happened outside your study area. So in this case, the way of creating external zone is exactly the same as to create internal zones. Just you don't need to create the edge of the of the zone. Okay, let's look how to create a traffic zone, and then we will go through the link. So, let me look for the network file. So we are back to Visum. Let me again move this one slightly lower so it fits better in the window. I don't know why it otherwise decide to cut it. So we have to go on open version this time. So to open the files in Visum, you go in File, Open Version. You go in the folder where the network file is, and you can have the network file. So let's start from network cut. This network cut is nothing else than the OpenStreetMap files that we opened before, after that I already removed some stuff, so that we can save the file and create and play a little bit with it. So I already explained the basic commands. So how do we create a traffic zone? Well, first of all, we have to create in zones, to click zones, so that we know, it's also written here that we are editing zones. And then we have to click on insert mode. Now that we are in the insert mode, the moment where I click, I will create the center of gravity of my zone. So if I do left click, my center of gravity is now 1. Now, as you may mention, my mouse is still with a small plus next to it, and it shows some small square when I move it around. Why so? Because now is the moment to include the edge of my area. So if, for instance, I want an edge that is square, I can just click on here. Look at the arrow now. So the arrow says the internal side of the square. So the arrow should point in the direction of my traffic zone. For instance, if I want it square, I can do it like this. Okay, but the arrow has to point in the internal side of the traffic area. So now I can do another left click, and I have decided one of the side of the traffic area. Second click, and I have decided another side. Third click, and if I want to make it a little bit more fancy, so for instance to border with this, I can just follow the border of this area. And when I'm happy with it, doesn't matter where my cursor is, I just press enter. And we created our traffic zone. Now, as I mentioned before, we also need to create connectors. So to create connectors, we have to go on connectors. If connectors are not active, you click on connectors, so on this small icon here, so the connectors become visible. You are already in insert mode, so you can just click on the center of gravity of the zone and on the node that you want to connect to the center of gravity. And you have a connector. If you want to add more connectors, as we did in the example, you just click on, also the node is the same. You see that you are in the plus mode. So when you are in the plus mode and you want to add, you just click on the node and you click on the center of gravity. And you have another connector. If you want to add 2 more, you can click on this node that you want to connect and on the center of gravity. And if you want also to connect this rod segment, you just click on the node you want to connect and on the center of gravity. And when you are happy, you just switch to select mode. If you don't want to see them, you can click again on this icon over here and the connector will disappear. The procedure to create external nodes is pretty much the same. Sorry, external traffic zones is pretty much the same, but the only difference is that you don't need the edge. You don't need this area around it. And to be honest, you only need it for graphical reasons because it helps you understanding which centroid to which area is associated. You might forget what you had in mind at the beginning, so that's why it helps, but probably is not required for external zones. You can do it, but it's probably not required for external zone. So let's activate our network and let's see that, for instance, everything that comes from the west part of Munich, we want to associate one external zone, right? So everything that comes from here, for instance. Well, we can just click on traffic zones again, insert mode again, left click, and once again I created a centroid. And as before, now Visum is asking me to create the edge of the traffic zone. If I'm not interested in creating, I can just press enter. Or ESC, let's see. Okay, they changed this. Okay, so it's slightly different. Usually it was enough to click on enter and it was doing it. Now you have to actually cancel the insert mode. So let's try again. We click on plus. We want to create an external zone here. So we click left click here. Then left click, cancel insertion of face. So I cancel it. And now if I click, I will add a new traffic zones. So for instance, if I click here, it add another traffic zone. I'm in the case of, creating the edge, but if I don't want to, I have just to also click ESC. So that's also another option. You can actually just click ESC. So I don't like this one. Let me cancel it. So once again, if you want to add only traffic zone without edge, you have two options. So traffic zones plus, either you click on the white area where you want to include it, then either you just press ESC and you're done. So you can move, for instance, to edit mode, or you can click on cancel insertion. And that's it. And for the connectors, you do exactly the same. You have to click on connectors, you have to click on plus, and then just connect the node that you want to connect with the centroid. Of course, you have to connect it to all the network, all the road segments. So in this case, I should connect it to the three of them, but you got the concept. So to add the connector, you just have to click between. You have just to be in insert mode, connector. You click on the node, you click on the centroid, and it creates the connector. So let's close this again, and let's switch to the remaining two elements of the network. You want to save? No, I don't want to save. Awesome. So the next object that we want to create is the link. So as we say, the link is the link connects two nodes. So if you want to create, so you need either to create a node or to connect to existing nodes to create a new link. And how you do it? You do it in the usual way. So you have to click select link, you have to click insert mode, and you will be able to create a new link. Now, when you create a new link, this window should appear, which tells you, of course, if you want to change the number of the link, but also if you want to change the type of link. This is very important because the type of link is basically the category of the road. So if you want to create a motorway, or if you want to create a rural road, or if you want to create a local road, well, each of these will be associated with a different type, and you can create as many types as you like. You can create one type for 3 lanes motorway, one type for 2 lanes motorway, and so on. And each type will have certain characteristics that will be automatically given to the link you are creating. Of course, you can modify this later on, but the best thing, but if you already know that you want to have certain characteristics, then the easiest way is to give the right type to the link that you are creating. The second thing is that when you create links, you create a straight line connecting two nodes. However, we all know that roads are not straight line. So you have two options to create a nicer network. One option is that you just create a lot of useless nodes so that you can basically follow the shape of the graph. But that's not very convenient because it creates a very heavy network. The second option is to edit the shape of the link. So this is a very nice feature in Visum that it tells you can, of course, change the shape of the link so that you can follow the network. And of course, this is not just a graphical aspect. This is also important for modeling, because in this specific context, you have the straight link in red, and you have the new curves here that has been modified. So in this case, the difference is not huge. But when you have very long segments, then the actual length of the link can change significantly between the two cases. So having just a straight line or having a link that actually follows the curves of the network. So this is why it's important to do that. Another things that we want to do is to edit the link characteristics. How do we edit links characteristics? Well, I feel I'm repeating myself, but repetition is hopefully good. To edit things, you have first of all to select links in the network window. You have to select the arrow, so edit mode. And then you have to select the link you want to modify. And when you double click on the link, you will have all the characteristics of the link. You will have the number of the link, from which node is originated the link, to which node is going, the type, so this is secondary road with 1 lane, which transport systems are traveling on it, in this case, bike, bus, and car. One important feature is you might notice the yellow color. So the yellow color, it means that this link has not the same characteristic on both sides. So probably this is a one-way link, which can be used from bike, bus, and car in one direction, but probably cannot be used by any transport mode in the opposite direction, or maybe cannot be used by bus in the opposite direction. So the yellow color, it means be careful. This information is only valid for this direction and not for both. While, for instance, you can clearly see that the length of the link is the same in both cases. You can also look at other information, like, for instance, you have different tabs here. So private transport characteristic, public transport characteristics. DUE is the advanced modeling. So how do we want to model congestion on the link, and so on. A second option is actually to do multi-edit. So imagine that you want to modify a bunch of links on the network, not just one. Then what you can do is to select a number of links. For instance, you can use spatial selection to select a group of links, and then you can modify the characteristics of these links altogether. For instance, if you want to remove the bikes from the entire network, then this is the way to go. Let's see what do we have next. The last one very important characteristics is also how to edit the link cost function. So what is the link cost function? The listCom function describes how traffic propagates on the link. And clearly you can use different functions, and each function will give you a different travel time for a different volume. So to edit the cost function, you need to edit it from the list of link types. I will show you directly this in the video now, but the idea is always the same. You go right-click on links, you go on list as we showed before, but instead of using list of links, you go on list of link types. What is the difference? So the list of links give you all the links in the network. If you have 100 links with the same time, in list of links, you will have 100 links. But in link types, you will have one link, one type, the only category existing in the network. If you have several categories, in this case, for instance, you have, as you see, motorway 1 lane, motorway 2 lanes, motorway 3 lanes. Well, then each of these categories can have a personalized cost function. So you can use different cost functions for different link types. Very quick, what is the cost function? Well, there are several volume delay functions. They are called in Visum. The most common is the BPR function, which has this equation. The BPR function says that basically the travel time, the actual travel time on a link, is function of the free flow travel time, T0, and on the volume, Q, that is actually traveling on the segment, and the capacity of the segment. So of course, if you have if the travel time of the segment is 5 minutes, and if you have 1,000 people traveling this link, what's going to be the travel time? Well, of course, it depends on the capacity. If the capacity of the link is 10,000, then the travel time of the link will be pretty close to the free flow travel time. If the capacity of the link is 2 and the demand is 1,000, the travel time is going to be huge. How huge, and specifically how quickly the travel time increase with respect to the volume, this is regulated by certain factors, which are A, B, and C. And here you can see all the details of the parameters. So as I say, T current is the actual travel time, T0 is the free flow travel time, Q is the traffic volume, Q max is the capacity. So until now, no real characteristics, no real parameters that you have to play with. Then you have A, B, and C. C is a capacity factor, how much actual capacity you want to consider, can be 1. And A and B are just two parameters that tell you how quickly the travel time is going to increase. And they are called BPR A and BPR B in Visum. So if you want to add them, we have to edit the cost function links, which is something I will show now with the graphical user interface. Last but not the least, Visum help is extremely important. So you can use the help of Visum to understand what everything is, where elements are in Visum. So for instance, if you don't know where the BPR is, you can use the com help or the manual. and you can just look for BPR I, BPR B. I will also show you how to use this in the in this video, basically. Okay, then we will have the last part, which is related to the node. So let's open again Visum for students, of course. Let's click on Open Version. This time we will open the network with the traffic analysis zones. Not that it does any difference, but it opened on a junction, okay. Not that it does any difference, but it's just nicer. So as you can see, there is no difference between the file that I opened this time and the file that I opened the previous time. But the only reason is because I deactivated traffic zones and connectors from the graphical user interface. If I click here, you will see that there are some traffic analysis zones. And if I click on switch on off graphic layer, you can see that I can actually also look at the connector. Because it's way more difficult to identify elements with all the element active, I prefer always to switch off some element from the graphic layer. So let's start from the beginning. We said, how do we include a new node? So here we have, for instance, an isolated link. Let's open the map in the background. It seems like this link, poor guy, is it's supposed to be connected somewhere, but it is not. So what we can do is to click on links, insert mode. And now that I'm in insert mode, as you can see, I cannot add, the mouse is telling me you cannot add a link here because there is no node. So to add a link, I have to click on the origin node, in this case, this node, and on the destination node, this one. And now, as promised, it's asking me which kind of road you want to use. Well, okay, number of node, I don't care. There are so many links that I trust Visum to generate a random number. Type, I might be interested. Is motorway one link? Nah. Is primary one lane? No, I don't like. Secondary one lane. Let's try secondary one lane. You can close the opposite direction, which means this is a one-way road, or you can say, okay, the type of the opposite direction is the same, or it's a different. But for now, we want to keep it open, and we want to say that they are both secondary one lane. And then we want to add another link here. So same thing. I click on one node, I click on the other node, new number, type I want to keep the same. This time I want to close it on the opposite direction. Okay. Now, if I want to play with my network and to make it slightly better, I need to switch to edit mode. Okay, so I added my two links. But once again, if you activate the background map, you can see that this link is not extremely realistic. Why? Because it's crossing a couple of buildings and maybe an internal yard. So that's probably not what we want. So we have to edit it. How do I edit? First of all, we click on it. Then we do right click, redefine line course. So as you see, now it's asking me, okay, where do you want? So if I want the link to follow this course, so the black part, so as you can see, my line before and after my arrow, before and after my mouse, one part is black, continuous, and the other one is dot. So the black is the part that after that I redefine the course, I will not be able to modify again. while the dotted line is the one that if I want to modify even further, I can. What does it mean? Let's say, okay, I want to my new link to pass from this point, right? So I click with left click, and now, as you can see, whatever I do, the first part of the course, I cannot change it anymore. Of course, I can change it later if I want to, but I cannot change it anymore. While here, in principle, I could do any shape I want. For now, I'm not interested in anything. I'm fine in keeping in this way, so I will just press enter. And this is the and now the direction is clear. The curse of the link it follows what it is supposed to follow. Also, something you can notice is that when I click, if you can see the arrow point which of the link I'm selecting. I'm selecting the link that goes from this node to this node when the arrow points on this node, and when I'm pointing to, and when the arrow is pointing down, I'm selecting the link that is going from this node to this node. You also might have noticed that the let's say how thick the link is when I selected chain. So this is, you can barely see it. When I select the other side, it's very thick. Why so? Because when it's thick, it means that the link is active. And when it's not thick, it is not active, which in this case is right, because as OpenStreetMap reminds us, this is a one-way direction. So this link, sorry, let's go on edit link. So if I double click on this link, now you can see that, as I mentioned before, transportation system, bike, bus, and car are yellow. If I select the opposite direction, it's empty. It means that nobody is using that link. And in fact, now, as you can see, the arrow is pointing up. So in this direction, nobody can use this link. In the opposite direction, well, the street is open and people can use it. The speed is, 80 kilometers per hour. That's perhaps a little bit too long. The capacity is 1,000. And as I mentioned here, you can provide dedicated information for private transport, for instance. If you want to have different information for each mode of transport, for instance, you can modify it from here. Same for public transport. And for dynamic user equilibrium, well, for congestion, you can also change some of the information here. For instance, V wave is the shockwave speed. That's not something we're going to discuss today, also because we are going to mostly work with static model, but this is how quickly and how fast the congestion is propagating in the network. So, okay, we did include these two new links, but we don't know if this is exactly correct or not. So for instance, if I click on this link, you see that actually this street is residential. And this street is secondary one lane. So probably it should be residential. So of course I can manually change everything, but what I can also do is to select the link, to just copy the information from one link to the other. So if I want to copy the information from this link to this link, I can just select the link I want to copy the information from, right click, copy attributes. Then I click on the other link, both direction is fine, right click, paste attributes. So now, as you can see, the color is the same, that's also nice. And when I double click, this is now a residential area. The length is different, of course, 50 kilometers, 400, and the capacity is only 400. If I want to copy, because the opposite, first of all, is keeping the previous information. So first of all, well, when we look at the length, maybe we want to keep this length. So maybe what we can do is to just keep the length from the previous link to the opposite. Why? Because it copied all our information. So, but then all the other information, actually, I want to keep this information also for the other. So what I can do is transfer changes to the opposite direction. It didn't change anything. Okay, then no. If you want to also copy it on the other direction, apparently you have to copy paste. It should work, this transfer changes to the opposite direction. I don't know why it doesn't work to me. But you can use the same procedure as before. You can just copy paste the information from one to the other. Okay, so now we have this road is residential, only 50 kilometers per hour of speed. Wait a second. Yep. Capacity is 400. And we have the correct link. Here, we can do the same. So we select this link we want to copy. For instance, this road is bidirectional, so it's absolutely fine. So we select the link, we right-click on it, copy attributes, then we click on the link we want to paste our attributes, and we just go for paste attributes. And if we want to also select the opposite direction, we paste the attributes again. So now when we open it, is residential. Actually, as before, it changes the length. So maybe we want to keep the original one. 089 is written on top. We want this to do the same here, 089. And that's it. So this is how we can edit our nodes. Now, if we want to edit a bunch of nodes, for instance, let's say that we want to select these two links. So to select two links, okay, let's deactivate the map. To select two links, as in many other software, you can just click on one, then press Ctrl, keep pressing Ctrl, and click on the other one. Okay, or you can also use the spatial selection once again. So you click here. So let me select everything once again first. Then you press Ctrl, you keep pressing Ctrl, and you click here. Now I can define the area as before. So I want to select only these two links, but in both directions. Okay, so now I have these two links selected. If I do right click, oh, right, I have to go back in edit mode. And I can click multi-edit. Multi-edit, it will open this function, which allow me to, this window that allows me to modify different links, actually all the links that I selected, even the entire network at the same time. So in this case, I want, for instance, to change the maximum speed. So when you click here, you open the list of attributes that you want to change. In this case, we say we want to change V0, so the maximum speed, okay. We can use factors, attributes, equations. In this case, we just want to put a constant factor, for instance, of 130 kilometers per hour. And that's it. So you click on constant, you write the number, 130 in this case. You click on OK, you close. And if we did everything right. Now the speed is 130 km/h. Again, just to be sure, we go back to selecting the entire system, the entire map, and we go back in edit mode. So I think that the last thing that I wanted to show you is how to modify the cost function. So as I said before, if we want to modify the cost function, we need to do it for each of the single types of roads that we want to modify. So we have to click on link, right click, list, and this time we go on link types. So links type give us all the different type of roads that we defined so far. What if we want to add some parameters? So they show us already some parameters, the maximum speed, the type of transport that is allowed by default. But what if we want to change these parameters and for instance, we want to add the delay function? Well, you have to click in this very small icon on the top, select attributes, this one with what I think is a screwdriver. So if you click here, Visum will open this window. And in this window, you can play with existing attributes. So for instance, you can remove the attribute. If you are not interested in the minimum speed for private transport, you can just take it out. I already have the volume delay function. Let's take it out as well. Also, you can change the order. So for instance, if you want to have capacity or number of lanes at the very beginning, you can click on the arrow and it will move it up. So you see now capacity is the second. If you want to move it down, you click on the arrow down. Now, what if we want to add information about the volume delay function? So, well, we have in the list of attributes, we have the option volume delay function. If we double click on it, it will open a series of options. So we can add all the information that we want to add. So one is the type of function. We want to add it. Can you see where it is? There you go. Let's move it at the end. Okay, so now we add the function volume delaying function type. And now we can see also here this small v that says we added. Then we want to add the BPRA. So once again, how do we add it? In case you miss it, you just click on this arrow add, as you can delete as well with the same arrow. So if you want to add the BPRA, you just, and as you see, it added just next to the VD function. And probably that's because I was clicking on the function. So if I click here, for instance, and I want to add BPRP, I click on BPRP, add, and as you see, it added BPRP next to, no, after VD function. So once again, if I want to add after VD function type also the capacity factor, I click on capacity factor, add, and it added all the functions, all the information that I need. So I just click OK. And now at the end of my window, I have all the information that I need. I have the type of functions, so I can change it from BPR, BPR2, BPR3, quadratic, logistic function. There are almost infinite functions. The BPR is by far the most common, and you can change the parameters of the function. Finally, what happens if you have no idea what a parameter is, what a function is, or how to change them. As I was saying before, you can use the help function in Visum. That's the same for if we don't cover everything or if something is not clear, you can really use, if you click on help, com help or PFT Visum help or the manual, they have a lot of information. So for instance, the com help, if you click on it, will open this HTML help window, which give you a lot of information. For instance, if you want to see the BPRA, you can just write it and search for it. And it will tell you that you can find the BPRA, whatever it is. We know it's a parameter, but it doesn't know. But it says that this word is in this topic. So if you just double click on this topic, it tells you, okay, this is about the impedance functions and their attribute. And it tells you all the attributes that you can have. So you have, among the other, of course, the BPRA and the BPRB. Something also interesting is that if, for instance, you click on capacity factor, it tells you a series of information. It tells you which kind of parameter it is, the minimum value, the maximum value, the default value. And even more important, for those of you that are working with maybe a German language of Visum, mine is the English one, but if you have the German, or of course the French one, you might have some different words. For instance, the capacity factor is actually cap factor. So yeah, you can find a lot of information. Sorry, I was reading the description in German, which is slightly different because some of the terminology change. And this is of course important because if you have another version, then you still don't find yourself completely lost. Okay, let's close it again because anyway we have only 23 minutes. Do you want to save your change? No. And let's move towards the last part of this presentation, which is how to insert a new node. If you want to insert a new node, well, guess what? You have to click select to choose node in the network window. You have to select insert mode over here, and you have to choose where you want to add the new node by simply clicking on the location where you want to add the new node. Another thing that you might want to do is to select nodes. So select nodes, you have just to, as usual, be in nodes, click on edit mode, and double click on the node you want to edit. By doing so, you will have access to this window. And it's important to note that on the left side, the network window will change from network to views. Why so? Because the network is actually several windows and several options, and basically too many to offer in just one simple interface. So apparently they just decided to provide several, which is great because each of them as an individual, let's say, interface is very intuitive. So for instance, the first interface gives you just very generic information about the node. The capacity of the node, because yes, you also have a capacity of the node, even though this is usually not the problem. You have the control type. Is this node represent something? If, for instance, it represents an intersection, you might have uncontrolled, signalized, different type of intersection. And of course, the travel time. So yes, you can even have a travel time for the node if you want to add some delay for some reason. The second interface is links. So why do you have a link view in the node, in the junction editor? because of course, as we said, links and nodes are connected, and this interface tells you how they are interconnected. So for instance, you have in this view all the information about all the links that are connected to the nodes, as well as their characteristics, capacity, type of mode that is using the infrastructure, and so on. Also, as I will show, by default, this interface is only showing you the active links. My suggestion is always to ask Visum to show all the links, because otherwise you might miss something. How do you do that? Again, I will show that, but you simply right-click in the white area over here, and it will pop up a window that asks you if you want to show also the closed links. All the information should also be provided in this very nice gray tab that I did last year. Finally, turns. So if you remember at the beginning of the video, I had a small problem with the isolated nodes. So one of the reasons for which nodes can be isolated is related to the turns. So as I mentioned, links have a specific role, which is connecting links. This can be because of an intersection, or it can be for a change of infrastructure. Visum doesn't know that, you have to tell him that. So for instance, by default, all the links will have a U-turn open. If you are on a motorway and you switch from two, and you include a node to split the motorway into half, motorway from kilometer 0 to kilometer 10 has 2 lanes, motorway from kilometer 10 to kilometer 25 has 3 lanes. Well, you do that by creating 2 links and putting a node in the middle. When you will create the node, probably Visum will by default activate all the turns, which is straight, backwards, and U-turn. And you probably don't want to have a U-turn in the moment in which the motorway switch from 2 lanes to 3 lanes. So this is the way in which turns can create a lot of problem to Visum, and even create situation in which the network makes no sense. For instance, if you have a one-way road and you open a U-turn, Visum will tell you that there is something deeply wrong in that. And once again, and again I will show it, but you can activate closed links and closed turns, because by default, Visum will only show you active links and active turns. This will be a little bit more clear when I will play with it, hopefully. But the idea is that closed turns are turns that are not active. For instance, here, this turn over here is not active. Why? Because it's not allowed for anybody to do that operation. While this turn is open. Why? Because it allows people to do this operation, even though in this example, I should have done clearly the opposite, because the U-turn is way less common, sometimes possible, but is not always possible. There are many ways. You have also to understand that what happened in one node, it can be also connected to the other nodes. So in these little windows before, you have these blue squares over here. These blue squares allow you to move to the next intersection. So if this link is connecting this node to another node over here, by clicking here, you will directly move to the other junction, to the junction that is, let's say, north with respect to where we are right now. And also Visum tell you this information. You have the N of north here, you have the W of west, and you have the E of east. So by just clicking on these three, you will move to the next node and to the next junction. Which one? The one north, the one west, the one east of where you are. And again, it's important because sometimes Visum will tell you that there is a problem in one node. You will open the node and it will look completely fine. And maybe the problem is related to the next intersection. Because once again, in the network, everything is connected. So sometimes moving from one junction to the other, just following, let's say one by one in this way, it's actually pretty nice. Geometry view, it allows you simply to see how the intersection looked like, and it, for instance, gives you also the possibility to play with it and to see what happened. I'm personally not a big fan of this view, so I do use it to just check how the intersection looks like, but I do prefer to work on links and nodes from the previous interface. However, you can change a bunch of things also here. Last things for today, how to create a signal timing. Well, to create a signal timing, you have first of all to click on signal timing window. You have to select to create signal timing. Once that you create the signal timing, you will have the possibility to create the different phases for the intersection. If the node is categorized as uncontrolled node, when you create signal timing, of course, Visum will ask you, do you want to switch to signalized intersection? And you have to click yes. Once that you have said that the junction, you want to have a signal, a traffic light on this intersection, you can click on add signal group to create to give a time to this phase. So for instance, you want to have that from east to west, you have that the green time start at 0 and the green time end at 50. The minimum green time is 5 seconds, the amber is 5 seconds, the all red is 5 seconds. All red, of course, is when nobody can use it and traffic lights are red at all the intersection. The last phase, once that you have done this, you have to actually tell this intersection that is from east to west. So for instance, the fact that you called this signal timing east-west is not enough to tell Visum that actually it should cover east-west. Also because you might have 3 different turns from east to west. So this is why what you can do is to select the lane turn, right-click, edit lane turns, and you can add which turns should be used. And then you can repeat the same for the west-east turns, and you will have your signalized intersection. So let's do this last thing. Visum 2020. Let's open our network again. I'm already in the junction, but so let's start from the basics as usual. If we want, we say to add a new link, a new node, what do? We click on plus, insert mode, node, and we click where we want to add. As simple as that. We don't have to indicate any other detail when we create a node. And the reason is that if you create a node, you need to create also links, of course. An isolated node doesn't make any sense. And you will have to spend a lot of time, not really on the node per se, but in defining the turns and which turns are possible, what is not allowed, and what is allowed in the system. So let's look how to do that. So once that you have your network, and so you have created your list of nodes, you can click on edit mode, still selecting nodes. You click on the node that you want to modify. So as in the slides, I will take these nodes. Is over here in the south. I think it's the same we use in the slides, so I can just double click on it. So if I click, I'll select it. And here in the quick view, you can see its information. If I click on link and I click on a link, here you can see the overview of the link. Let's go back to node, stick in edit mode. One click, I select it, double click, it opens the junction editor. So as I said, first tab, you only have the general information about the node, including, for instance, the control type. So We can have unknown, uncontrolled, two-way stop, signalized, a series. For now, we put it uncontrolled. Then let's switch to links. So let's first of all be sure that the closed links are showed. So of course, how do you move from node to link? From this window over here. If you go back to network editor, this window will disappear. So from here, you can change from one section to the other. You can also, for instance, keep multiple tabs open, like also the list of links. And you can navigate from the bottom to each of them. When you are in network editor, you still keep this window of network. But when you enter in the junction editor, of course, you switch to the commands that are relative to the junction. So when you simply double click, you're usually in nodes. And if you want to move to links, you have to click on links. As I said, we want to be sure that all links are appear in this table and not only the active links. How do we do that? Well, we bring our mouse in this white area over here where there is nothing, and we just do right click. And then these options appear over here. So I'm in this area, right click, and then I can just click show also closed links. And we see actually that I was wrong. That's why it's always important. There is already one link that is closed. We don't know if this is correct or not at this point. Just to be sure, we leave it closed. What does it mean? It means that this link is open and this link is closed, right? Perfect. Again, if we want to change, we can, for instance, just click here and select that it is active for car. Okay. If we want to select none, we just click on select none. Okay. And if, for instance, we want to deactivate this the link for certain users, for instance, we don't have bikes maybe in our system, or we don't have pedestrian, so we can just say, okay, remove bike and remove pedestrian. And then you want to put car, heavy vehicles, and bus, for instance. And you can do the same for everywhere. So bus, car, heavy vehicles, bike, pedestrian. But then if you have to do something like that, it's probably easier if you just click on it and you just select the three options you want. Click, you select the three options. Okay. Click, you select the three options. Okay. These are the two options. So either you click on it and it will appear this window, or you right click and it will appear the option. And of course you can add one more system or remove one more system. You can also change the other characteristics, but usually you don't want to do that. Why? Because that's something that you should have done already while working on the links. Let's go to turns at this point. Again, we want to be sure that we have all the turns active. So we are here, do right click, and we click also show also closed turns. And there you go. Right click, show also turn of block links. There you go. So we already realized that there is a problem here. There are at least two problems. So this turn, let's start from a turn that works. So this turn, this link, has 3 turns active. So when I click on any turn that comes from this link, and specifically for this link, I mean the links that is entering in the intersection, because if I take this link, is a different one, as you can see. When I click on this link, I have these 3 options. If I click on any of the turns from this link, what will happen is that the turn that I'm selecting right now is in red and the other are in black, right? If I just click on the link, so I just click on this link, it shows all the turns, but it shows them in black. So black it means that the turn is active and it works if you select one turn. It says the red one is active and is the one you are selecting right now. However, we might not want the U-turn. So if I don't want the U-turn, I can just select this and say select none. Okay. Now this turn is not possible anymore. I'm avoiding having U-turn. How did I do that? By just saying that U-turn is not allowed for any transport mode. So if I select bike, for instance, now it is technically allowed, but only for bikes. And as we said before, there are no bikes here. If I select car, okay, now it works. So why? Because now it's active for all the transport system that I have on the link. If I select none of the transport system, it shows nothing. And if I select any of the other, it shows me, look, now you are selecting this turn that brings you from this link to this link. This is active, is selected because I'm selecting it, is active. And from the same link, you have another turn that is going north, which is not selected but is active. And you have a U-turn that is not active. How do you select one? Well, you can just click on the turn ID on the column. So if you click on on any cell that belongs to a certain turn, you will select the turn. So why I started from here? Because if we go here, we see that this link was closed. So we have 3 turns that are allowed, but we know that these turns are impossible because actually, even if they are technically allowed, they are actually coming from a link that has no service. So something that we want to do now is select none for this. Select none. Select none. Now, it shows exactly the same, but it's more appropriate now. Because before we were allowing something for nobody, and that's why the turn was closed. Now the turn is closed because nobody can do that turn. Then we go here. This turn is allowed. Good. This turn is not allowed. Why? We don't know. We want to add it. So we just click on it. From bus to, we select bus. Of course, to select multiple, you have either to press Ctrl while you are selecting, or you can just click on the first, you keep pushing Shift, and you select 3. Good. So now this is also allowed, this is allowed, and we don't want to allow the U-turn. So select none, okay. And there is only one problem. Now this, okay. So how do we know if what we have done makes sense or not? Well, we can use the geometry. And the geometry tells us exactly this. So as you can see, the 2 intersections that are actually on the 2 lanes line, we have one line going this direction, one line going this direction. Actually, this should be, okay. I was confused because from this link, you should allow this direction and this direction. But here you can only see that you can go straight. But you can only go left, sorry. But the point is that both are allowed. That's what we learned. as you can see here. So if you click on turns, it shows you the turns that are allowed. And it's also shown that, for instance, here, this is not allowed. Why it is not allowed? Let's see. It is not allowed because we didn't change the mode of transport. So this is why the geometry helps us. It is not allowed because even though it's technically open, the link only work for this is only for bike and pedestrian also. So let's go here. We say, okay, we only want this to be from bars to heavy vehicles. So now it's showing us that these maneuvers are only for bike, pedestrian, and so on. Signal group, of course, they do not exist. One lane bike, pedestrian. So just to be sure, we change it also here at this point. Okay, now we should have okay. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I usually don't use this interface. I only use it for validation, and this is exactly the reason. When I work with this, so far I never had a problem. Now, for instance, we change this too. So you know what? We skip to this tree. Why we skip to this tree? Because they are more reliable. Okay, now, as you can see, they are all consistent. So that's good. Now we have that this line is actually only one direction. From here you can go straight and left. From here you can go straight and from here you can go straight and left, and from here you can go straight and right. And you can see it from here too. So as I mentioned before, this is very helpful to see if something is working or is not working. To be honest, I don't know why it was showing this this thing. Probably when we updated the node, maybe something was not updated in the link. But the point is, as I said before, use always links here, turns here, and use mostly geometry for validation. So now you know that the signal is working. Finally, let's go. Here I already created one. Okay, let's cancel. Finally, we want to create a signalized intersection. So how do we do it? We go in signal timing. We click on create signal group. Number 1. I don't know if there are others. Code, let's call it traffic. And we can use the same name. We can put only 60 seconds of cycle time, for instance. We can put whatever. Signal base group is okay. And then we can create. The signal group already exists. Okay, so let's try sixth, for instance. Now, it says that this is possible, but as I mentioned, it says, do you want to change the control type to signalized and to allocate the new signal group to this node? You have, of course, to say yes. So what happened here? That if you go back to node, where is it? Now the control type is signalized. Because of course you can only have a signal timing in signalized intersection. Now that we have created the right intersection and we have the signal group, we can give the phases to this. So how do we do it? We're going to create signal group, if I remember well. Number 1 is good. We can call it, for instance, from west to east. We start at 0. We have 60 seconds, so we end up, for instance, at 25 seconds. Minimum green time, we give it 5 seconds. Amber, we give it 3. And 2 seconds of all red, which means nobody can go through. Okay, so now, as I mentioned, let me make it a little bit smaller. Now, as I mentioned, we have the signal group from west to east, but we have to assign this west group to the maneuver from west to east, because Visum doesn't know that automatically. So how do we do it? Well, we click on the signal group, right click, edit lane turns. Which lane turns we want to use? Well, all the turns that go from west to east in this case, or west to north. We could have 2 different signal timings, for one from west east, one from west north, for instance. You can create as many as you want. So you click OK, and now you have the turn. So if you want to create another signal group for east-west, you have to do the same procedure. You go here. Number 2, we call it east-west. Green time start 30 seconds this time. We end up at 60 because we have 60 seconds in total. We give 5 seconds here, 3 seconds of amber, and 2 seconds of all red. Okay, and here we have our second group. Same thing as before, we have to assign here. When I click on west east, I see that these 2 are associated to it. When I click here, I have nothing. Why? I still need to associate the turns to this signal group. So right click, edit lane turns. Let's select these 2. Once again, you use Control for selecting 2. So you select 1, you press and you keep pressing Control and you select the second one. You go on OK, and that's it. You can probably, let me try to remember, change it from here too. Yeah. If you do something like that, you will have problems. I mean, you have probably a couple of turns that are possible at the same time. You definitely don't want this. And that's it. That concludes the class for today. So now everything is consistent in a node. You have a node which is signalized. You have that one link is closed and all the other are open for bus, car, and heavy vehicles. You have that the turns are consistent with the links. So basically only this one, this one, this one, and this one are open, while these one are all closed. This one is closed. This one is closed. You have the geometry that is consistent with what we just defined. And we have our signal timing. So everything is pretty good. Do you want to save change? No. I've lost track of time, so I hope we are roughly on time. I think we are actually more than 10 minutes late. Okay, sorry. I wanted just to show everything. So some tips. I really recommend to use edit mode as a default option. Edit mode is, as you can see here, to stay in the arrow, not on the plus, not on the spatial edit, just on the normal edit. Be careful to have all elements selected when you are working. It might not seem like, but it can be a real issue occasionally if you have not all the network selected. So unless you are working with a sub component of the network for a specific reason, just keep everything selected all the time. Don't forget that the manual and the help com are your friends. They might have answers that I don't have, or they have just better answers. Visum comes with a tutorial, usually in English or German, and this tutorial is located usually in this folder where, okay, this is not 18, this is gonna be 20. But this is fine because this is tips. Actually, this tutorial, we will discuss them later during the course when you will have a little bit more tools to work with Visum. So this is everything on my side. I wish you good work and I hope everything is clear. Have a nice day.